Yo, what's poppin' everyone? Welcome back to the Shuffle Squad. Zach Lesage here. Today we're going to be covering over the best decks in Pokemon TCG from Temporal Forces. Now, over the past weekend or so, I was able to compile over 70 City League events from Japan that happened, and I took all the top 8s or better to compile this list and rank these decks based off of the top earning points. It's really taken a lot of effort, so I appreciate everyone watching and tuning into this video. Take your best deck, take your best guess on the best decks. It's a confusing sentence, but regardless, I will make sure that this format is not confusing for you. We'll be covering all over the top 10 best decks in the format right now. If you're heading to EUIC, Orlando, just curious about our new format post-rotation, this is really the one for you. The lists are available in the pinned comments, so you can copy and paste those into any of your Limitless Tabletop Simulator or likewise apps. Once the set's released, you should be able to copy and paste those into PTCG Live without many issues. That being said, we're going to jump into our number 10 pick. Again, comment the best decks that you think are going to be on this list. Comment the order that you think the lists are going to be in. Let's see if you're right. Let's jump into it. Let's get it. Jumping into our number 10 pick, we have Great Tusk Mill. Now, this deck has been performing pretty well in Japan, picking up a handful of top 8s, and even going a little bit beyond that. This version seems like it's doing well as the same list that did, it made top cut at the Champions League a few weeks back. That plays Comfey and Rescue Board, so you're able to maneuver every single time one of your Great Tusks is knocked out, giving you a free flower selecting to help go through your deck. Couple changes that I've made here is included in Erica's Invitation, because sometimes you could trap a Pokemon that your opponent does not want to have in the active into their active spots. Beyond that, the list is pretty straight at this point, where I think a lot of people are playing similar lists. You really just want to power up Great Tusk, play some kind of supporter that's Ancients, so that you can mill 4 cards from your opponent's deck and trap your opponent up with a Counter Catcher or an Erica's, or maybe Eerie, take their cards away from their hands. We can go on and on about how these decks are powerful or how these decks can mill your opponent. Really, it just depends if it sticks or not. I think Great Tusk is severely underrated in this format, and being one of the newer decks and already in the top 10, I think this is a deck that's totally worthwhile to explore as we kind of enter into our Temporal Forces metagame. Pretty sure you could pick up most of the cards in this deck for a solid $20 bill. Great Tusks are literally going to be $4 for $1 at most game stores, so if you haven't already, pick these cards up, probably worthwhile. And if you haven't already, give this video a like, really supports the channel. We'd really appreciate all of y'all doing that, and maybe leaving a comment if you like Great Tusk or any of the other decks in this video. Let's jump into our number 9 pick. At our number 9 spot, we have Snorlax Blocking the Way, another mill control deck that we're literally trying to deck out our opponent over time and make sure that they can't retreat. So very similar strategy, and you can see that there's some overlap with the Pidgeot, the Mimikyu. There's some cool cards in this list like Mantine that you might need to pull out of the back of the shoebox that you got back there. I know that I had to try to find them. So when it's one of those things where we lost Echoing Horn, Mantine is very similar to that. We've also lost Crabominable. Chi-Yu is very similar than that. We've seen some lists that play Radiant Charizard. We've seen some lists that play some other fire type attackers. I've gone pretty basic with this list across the board, and to me this is looking like a pretty standard version of Snorlax block control. You're just going to keep on healing your Snorlaxes with Penny. You can continuously loop by having Silene, Team Yelcheer over and over again. You are likely not going to deck out before your opponent with all these ways to get cards back, including Pidgeot V. And if your opponent can't get out of Snorlax, like a lot of decks that only run one switch and one prime catcher, Charizard, but it's one of those things where Snorlax, it has a solid matchup spread. Now, the decks that this deck struggles against would be decks like Lost Zone Box, for example. Similar as last format, those decks typically play more switching outs, so if you're not getting those with Misfortune Sisters, or if you're not ripping that out of your opponent's hand with Eerie, you might be struggling. There's nothing that they could really hide from now, because it's either you're ripping it from their deck or ripping it from their hand. It just depends on how quickly they're able to execute their strategy. Snorlax, like Great Tusk Mill, is incredibly underrated in this format, and I wouldn't be surprised to see if either one of these two decks made a deep run at EUIC. Coming back from the ashes is Arc Tina, a deck that did really well before and kind of took a bit of a hibernation, I should say. This deck gained a lot from Temporal Forces in the forms of having Iron Leafs EX to bust in to the active after Arceus loads up some of your other Pokemon. So while you cannot power it up because it is not a Pokemon V, it is a Pokemon EX, you can power up one of your Pokemon V like an Arceus or a Tina on your bench. And Iron Leafs, you put it into the active and it grabs all those energies. There's some things that we have here like Radiant Gardevoir. That's really to have an answer to both Lost Tina and to Arc Tina and other Arceus variants, because Pokemon V are still an issue in this format that you're going to have to deal with. We have a lot of disruption cards like Judge and Iono and Eerie to really hit our opponent hard. We have Maximum Belt, so Tina can hit a Charizard EX for that 330 magic number. We have a lot of really cool things going on with this list. I worked with Blake Ray from the Shuffle Squad, shout out Blake, to really get a perfect list for this. And I think this list is almost perfect, if not absolutely perfect. So if you're an ARC player and you're looking for a solid deck for EUIC or any of your tournaments that you have coming up, this list is absolutely busted. And I think it has a great matchup against a lot of the top decks in format. So while ARC might be boring and simple does not necessarily mean it's winning checks at EUIC is what sounds really cool to me. And I like doing well. I like getting my World's Invite. I like things. Decks like these are very good early on in the format. Play them while you can. This is a great deck to pick up, especially if you're joining just right into our post-rotation metagame. Arguably our first new deck in this kind of format, we have what I used to call Future Box, and I change it up. It's now going to be Turbo Iron Hands, because I think that fits the theme of the deck a little bit more. Iron Crown increases our damage for Iron Hands EX and for Miraidon and all of our future Pokemon because they can all attack. It's busted. And we just want to go Miraidon, load up some energies onto our Pokemon. We can use Future Booster Energy Capsule to get free retreat on any of our Pokemon so we can go into that turn 1 Miraidon. Techno Radar is literally one of the most broken item cards if you're a Future Box deck of some kind of sort. And we can search those out with Arven. So arguably we have a consistent way to power up a Pokemon that draws 2 prize cards very quickly. This seems like the second coming of ADP or Arceus Dialga Palkia that we saw was absolutely tearing it up in our Cosmic Eclipse Sword and Shield on kind of metagame. And to me, this is a great thing. Put a lot of effort into this list. A lot of really cool inclusions when it comes down to it. I don't see a reason not to play this list. I think it's so new that that's the reason why it's ranked low. And remember that we're still in a pre-release format. I do not have all the cards to play all of these decks. I have all of my great stuff from Ultimate Guard. As you can see here, I have decks that are built all up in here. I've been testing with my friends. I have not played these in an officially Pokemon sanctioned tournament. So as these decks are still growing and people are still learning about them, we're learning about little things when it comes to these lists and building things correctly as possible. So these lists still might have a few adjustments. There might be some breakthroughs on things that work well on the list. But regardless, this is a very powerful deck, and I highly recommend that you pick up the cards for doing so. I don't want to sound like a shameless plug, but we are Shuffle Squad, and we've got to support ourselves somehow. We do have sponsors in the form of PTCGL Store, Atlas TCG, and Kayfabe Cards. You can check out the description right now and support the Shuffle Squad by buying cards from our sponsors, whether it's online cards, sealed packs, whatever singles you need to play these decks. They're all available in the description. Most of them ship globally. Would really appreciate if you could help support the Shuffle Squad that way. That being said, I think this deck's sick. Let's jump into our number 6 deck and see what we got going on there, because it's only everything but up at this point. Lost impacted up at number 6 is Lost Tina. Now, Lost Tina might have lost Path to the Peak to the rotation, but it did gain Iron Leafs, and it did gain Rescue Board. and I'm saying rescue board because it used to be emergency board from the Japanese translation, and I did pull some from my pre-release, and now it's rescue board, so it's screwing me up a little bit, but that's okay. Lost Tina didn't really lose too much at the end of the day. We have Buddy Poffin that we can kind of use, and that's where we gain some cool strategies from this deck. We can use Buddy Poffin to get a Ditto and out into play, Ditto transform that into a Comfey, Ditto transform that into a Tina, and this is really where I think the deck is fantastic. When going through this list, I think that it is incredibly tight, and everything we want to have in there, like I think our Pokemon line is perfect. I think my supporter line is perfect. I think Mirage Gate, Nest Ball, Buddy Poffin is perfect. I'm a little hesitant about our switch card count, and I could kind of switch for a Pokegear. That's really what I'm debating here at this point, or maybe I'll cut a Water Energy from the deck. Regardless, I think this deck is probably 58 to 59 cards perfect, depending on how you look at this deck. I have a lot of experience playing Lost Tina, played it at most of my League Cups, have earned something like 300 or 400 points for my World's Invite total with a Lost Tina deck, and I could very well see myself playing this deck at EUIC, Orlando, Indianapolis. Like, it seems incredibly powerful to our next format. So as we kind of explore these previously existing decks that have all been very powerful, that don't lose much to rotation, are also very good. So if you've been playing Lost Tina, Charizard, Chien-Pao, Arceus decks, they all are very good because they don't lose a lot going into rotation. They jump into the rotation. We know how they're built because we've seen them win regionals, worlds, whatever, and we can take those core skeleton lists and apply them. So it's not rocket science to cut Battle VIP Pass from the list and change it up to Buddy Poffin plus Ditto. That's not, like, I don't feel like I'm the world's greatest deck builder when I make those changes. However, I am very good at polishing off lists, and this is a very well polished list heading into an early EUIC format. So if someone's still exploring an Ancient Box deck, for example, they might not necessarily have as good as a list as this Lost Tina list. So that's the one advantage about playing a previously existing deck at these early tournaments like League Challenges, League Cups, even just League Nights. You can really rule them all with one of these previously existing decks. We're about to see our number 5 deck. So far, I hope that you've been enjoying this video. We'll see what we got going on from here because we're at the halfway mark. Lugia was our number 1 deck in our last Temporal Forces deck video, and it's dropped to our number 5 deck as kind of things have evened out in the metagame. This is the deck that won the Champions League, the major 2,000 plus player event in Japan a few weeks ago, and this is the refined version of the list. We're not necessarily focusing on Chinchino and loading up all those special energy cards onto it to do all the damage. We can now use Snorlax to attack for those mid-in-between. So sometimes I was using Chinchino to knock out my opponent's Comfey. Well, that kind of sucks, right? Because I have to evolve and go through the efforts. Snorlax really helps out, gives you a better answer against a lot of these Lost Tina, and 180 damage on a single prize card Pokemon does a lot, especially when Therapeutic Energy stops the extra sleep kind of effects, and we have Jet Energy if you don't necessarily get there. Kind of worked a lot on this trainer line, the supporter line, and the amount of collapsed stadiums to make sure that we are not offering up many prize cards. We could transform into a single prize card deck. I think that this list looks amazing. I think if we were to jump into a tournament tomorrow, this would be a Lugia list that I have no problem confident getting championship points in. I think it's really funny that the Limitless image generator that I use shows the old school Master Ball, and it's a reprint of the exact same one. So you could play the pink one, you could play the old one from, I think, Plasma Blast or whatever, one of those older sets from like 10 years ago. But I think that this is a fantastic list to play around with. Give it a try. Lugia is super consistent. Lugia absolutely tore up last year with its kind of colorless version and powerful colorless energy. Saw a lot of success as colorless Lugia, single strike Lugia. I mean, I have a day 2 with Lugia this past year. I think it's one of those things where you really want to look at this and be like, okay, you want to know what? Lugia is very powerful. If you don't have them now, pick up Lugia's, totally worthwhile. See what we got going in our number 4. Put your best guesses in the comments below. Surprising to even me is number 4 being a kind of new age turbo Lost Zone box. Now, Lost Zone box is something that's just, it's an incredibly powerful archetype. We've seen it see success at all levels of the game, winning regionals. Azul won OCIC last year. this deck has always been very good, and it also didn't lose a lot from rotation. We still have Comfey, Sableye, Cramorant, and we have Mirage Gate, which could power up anything. And when you could power up anything, there's no limitations there. So in this case, the best Pokemon to power up in the game are Roaring Moon to knock out whatever you want, and Iron Hands to draw extra prize cards. We still have Raikou with 4 Steel Stones, so we're able to get off a V-Star ability. We're able to maybe use Lost Vacuum to get those cards into the Lost Zone a little bit quicker. And we didn't really lose much from Battle VIP Pass because most of our Pokemon we could search with Buddy Poffin. I could see a Ditto in this deck, and I think Ditto is something that I want to play a little bit more with Buddy Poffin as we go through. However, I'm not entirely sure what I want to cut from this list because I think it's almost perfect. I don't want to cut any switching cards. Like, I don't really see what I want to cut. I could see myself trying to have an answer to Iron Hands because that might be something that we're going to struggle with. However, that's really on my to-do list when it comes down to it. So if you're a Lost Zone box player and you've been playing the deck for a hot minute, I think that this is a very well-polished Lost Zone box list as we approach EUIC, has answers to Lugia, has answers to single prize card decks, has answers to big Pokemon with big HP, has that quickness, has that you could spread, like, Lost Zone box has a surprise, a toolbox of Pokemon that you could choose from. And I honestly think that this deck is totally worthwhile for you to invest in, try out, because it's as good as it ever was. It really didn't lose much when it came to rotation. Give it a try. Is it cold in here, or is it just me, or is it maybe the chien-pao that's causing me to try to ruin this video with my fun puns? Freezing face emoji. Anyways, chien-pao is back on its grind. It gained not much from this set, but Codebreaker or Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking, whatever the card's called in English, because it's gone through a bunch of name changes from Japan to our translations to where we are. I think it's Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking, a super long name. Really breathes some life into this deck. We lost Cross Switcher, we added in Prime Catcher. We lost I don't think there's really much else. Like, we lost Battle VIP Pass, we add in Buddy Poffin. Could I see us cutting Buddy Poffin, or cutting a card to add in a Ditto? Maybe. Is 4 Buddy Poffin too much? I could see it going to 3, like a lot of the Lost Zone box decks. Cards that I might want to add into this list would be like a Counter Catcher. I could maybe see myself switching the Frigibacks up, because I've looked at some arguments from Kieran and Jared Grimes online and Owen Kammerman. A lot of interesting takes when it comes to this list. However, I've looked at all of their decks, seen the opportunities that are there, and my only thing is, I don't know if we want to play 1 or 2 Codebreaker, and I don't know if we want to add in a Counter Catcher or a Pal Pad. Those are really my big changes that I'm thinking about making to this list, and it's things that are like, it keeps me up at night as I prepare for this event. chien-pao is arguably the best positioned deck that we have going into this next format, and I wouldn't be surprised in the next couple weeks at City League tournaments or whatever tournaments they have going on in Japan that this deck takes over, because there's a lot of other decks that this deck has a strong matchup against. I don't want to necessarily ruin the surprise, but if you've been watching the video up to this point, if you've been keeping up with the Japanese meta, I'm sure you could probably guess what the top 2 decks are. So C-Pao looks like it's probably in its best position in a long time. List is well refined. Take your best guess of what we have at the top 2 decks going in here. All these decks, probably in the top 5, are going to rule the format, so we'll have to see how it plays out. But without further ado, let's check out our number 2 deck. At our number 2 spot, we have Charizard EX spitting that Dark Fire Flame with the barrel here. This deck's a deck, I've been going on and playtesting this a whole bunch, and I'm a firm believer in the Barrel engine, because we get Code Breakers, put whatever we want on top of our deck, draw it with the Barrel, and when you could put things like Prime Catcher on top of your deck, or Counter Catcher on top of your deck, or Defiance Band on top of your deck, you have the ability to increase your damage, knock out whatever you want, get that rare candy Charizard. Like, we have a consistent engine that allows Charizard to fly high. And I think that everything in this deck, such as having double Technical Machine Evolution and having Millions and Barrels, are all very great. Could I see myself cutting Jirachi and Manaphy for a 1-1 Rabsca line if Technical Machine De-Evolution becomes an issue? 100%. Right now, I think Jirachi and Manaphy are a little bit better. I think the supporter line is very good. I could see myself adding in a second Code Breaker, because that could really help out a lot by putting more cards on top. The synergy is insane when it comes between Squovitz and Code Breaker and Barrel and everything else that we have going on there. But there's only so much that we could put on top of our deck when we're not playing Boss's Orders. I think that there's really not much that I want to change with this list. Like, I think that I got it pretty close to perfect, and I might want to change, like, an Iono or an Arven for a Code Breaker. That's really where I'm at. If you have any other suggestions, and if you've been playing Charizard, totally love to hear your comment. We get back to all comments on our channel. Some of them are shorter than others, but it's one of those things where catch me on the right comment, I'm invested, we get there. We see Charizard as our number 2 deck. What do you think is going to be our number 1 deck? Is it going to be a surprise? Is it going to be Raging Bolt EX? Is it going to be Gouging Fire EX? Is it going to be Walking Wake? Take your best guesses and let us know. Otherwise, we're about to present it to the world, the number 1 pick in our Temporal Forces, the best performing deck currently in Japan from their city leagues. Let's get it. And here you have it. It is Charizard again, this time with the Pidgeot package. So sometime in the past couple weeks, Charizard Bibarel went from being the number 1 performing deck to the number 2 performing deck to the Pidgeot version. It seems like people started playing Pidgeot, few people copied it because it did very well, and people are leaving Charizard Bibarel a little bit behind. Charizard, if we combine them both, is like 3 times as much success as Chien-pao, give or take. But this version itself has held its own without combining it significantly more than the Bibarel version. So if you're a Pidgeot enjoyer, or if you pulled some of those new shiny Pidgeys and Pidgeots from Paldean Fates, this is really the time to bring out the deck. Charizard looking very similar across the board, but you don't need to play that Code Breaker in order to put cards on top of your deck, because you can just search for whatever you want. And maybe that instant access is worthwhile. One of the reasons why I was not necessarily looking at the Pidgeot version before is because we were looking at the opportunity of our opponent using Prime Catcher, knocking out Pidgeot EX. There's decks like Turbo Iron Hands that exist, Chien-pao Iron Hands, Lost Zone Box Iron Hands, Lost Tina. Like, it's, again, I can't say that this deck is very well positioned in the metagame, but I can say that the dominance of Charizard is unparalleled compared to any other deck. So while we look at it, I think Charizard is going to be part of the main story. It's the main character going into EUIC. And whether you're playing it and trying to get those championship points and trying to make a deep run with this deck, or you're trying to counter it, that's really going to be the story of what it is. Let me know. Do you think Pidgeot or Bibarel is better? Totally love to have that discussion with any of y'all when it comes into the comments below. But right now, I think that this version of the deck is absolutely sick. The deck list is perfection. So if it's one of those things, if you're looking for a solid deck list, we certainly got you covered. That being said, I'm going to close things out here real quick. Thank you so much for watching up until this point. Again, do not forget about the deck list available in the pinned comment. If you want to play on any tabletop sims, let me close things out and summarize everything. And there you have it, another format where Charizard ends up on top. Now, Charizard really seems like it's in the case where it's doing very well because it's very good, and as much as that might sound really simple, it doesn't necessarily mean it's well positioned. There's a lot of decks on this list, such as Arc Tina, or maybe even Lost Zone Tina. There's a lot of answers to Charizard in this format that you can kind of tackle on, so we'll see if Charizard continues to be the points leader heading into EUIC. But either way, a lot of the decks on this list are fantastic. I also have a lot of lists available for use in our Patreon Discord or my own personal Patreon Discord. So be sure to check those out and see exactly what you want. Support myself, support the Shuffle Squad, support our sponsors. If you haven't already, give this video a like, share with your friends, and double check to make sure that you've subscribed. It shows that 50% of you watching are not subscribed. So if you got to this point in the video, double check. Every subscription counts, and it's totally free to do so. That being said, I'm probably going to get back to my post-rotation testing. I really appreciate y'all watching this video. Catch up with you soon. Peace out and have a great one. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. Hey trainers, tired of having too many cards lying around? I know that feeling, and I know what a hassle it is to try and sell those cards. But selling bulk is now easier than ever with TCG Bulk. Find tons of potential buyers in a single place. You just download the app, look for the best buyer near you, and carefully pack your bulk, ship it, and you get paid. It really is that simple. Turn the cards you don't want into the cards you absolutely need for your next deck. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.